So I just finished reading The Diary of Anne Frank, and I'm really glad that I read this. There were parts of it that were so relatable, and then there were parts where it's just like, how on earth did she stay so positive? And just looking at the dates in this, like, I mean, I knew when this happened, but just the fact that every diary entry started with the year that they were in, it just made me really think about the fact that my dad was alive when this happened. Like, he lived in England, he was only very little when this was being written, but just makes me think, like, if my family had had a slightly different nationality, like, how different our lives would have been. And I mean, Jonathan's Oma was also alive when this was being written, and she lived in the Netherlands, so she would have been like really close by when this was being written. So yeah, it just makes you think about like how lucky we are now, and how much less prejudice there is in the world now. Like, it still exists, obviously, but nowhere near to the same extent, and we're just really lucky to live in this time and to have all the things that we have. Also, I didn't realise this when I started reading this, but there are two versions. There's the abridged version and the unabridged version, and this is the abridged version because it is very old, and they made the unabridged one in 1996, I think. So this one's older than that, when they hadn't discovered, well, I don't know how it happened exactly, but her dad made the diary into a book, basically, but he left some of the bits out that made him look bad, and when she like talked bad about her mum as well. But I guess it was after he died and the diary fell into other people's hands, they realised that it had been edited a little bit, so they then made the full version, which obviously I don't have. So, oh well, I read the other bits online anyway. It's not that different, but whatever. But yeah, anyway, my thoughts on this were, I wouldn't say I enjoyed it, because it's not the sort of book that you are supposed to enjoy really, but I'm glad that I read it. Hey, so I just finished reading The Da Vinci Code, which took a few weeks because I started reading it and very quickly realised that I had seen the movie, and I actually really hate reading books after I've already seen the movie. I like to do it the other way around. I love reading the book first and then seeing the movie, but I don't like doing it the other way around. So I then basically put this down for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I just couldn't pick it up again because I didn't want to read something after I'd seen the movie. But I eventually went back to it because I've been sick for the last like week, and I just ran out of things to do at home that didn't require getting up and moving around. So I finally picked it back up, and I just got straight back into it, and I just read basically the whole thing other than the first few chapters in about 2 days, and I thought it was really cool. I love all of the layers. I can't imagine how Dan Brown came up with so many layers to everything. There's like double meanings behind everything, and I'm so impressed that he just made everything fit together so well. And I thought it was so cool, like every time he talked about some of the details in a painting, I'd look the painting up on my phone and be like, yeah, that detail is in that painting, which is kind of cool. And I had never heard of phi before, and when he started talking about phi, I thought that it might have been made up for the book, but I searched that on my phone as well, and that's a real thing that exists. So yeah, it was just a really interesting book to read for me. I do recommend it if you haven't read it already. I did have to reread a lot of sections. Like, when they explain the links between stuff, it's really complicated, like for me anyway, so I'd have to read up to an entire page all over again so that I could like break it down and make sure that I understood where they were coming from. But now that I've finished this one, I am really excited to read my next book, which is the parody of this. So yeah, that is my update. I've finished 2 out of my 17 books so far. So I've actually read a book that I wasn't planning on reading. It wasn't in my list of 17 books to read this year, but I read it. It's just a book that we have at work because it's related to my job that I do. And it's called The Reason I Jump, and it was by a Japanese boy. I think he was 13 at the time. I think his name is Naoki Higa. Hang on. His name is Naoki Higashida. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. But anyway, he has autism and he was kind of writing this book about his experiences with autism and kind of, it's just an insight into how the brain of an autistic kid works. So as he was 13, he was kind of coming out of the worst of it. So he still had all of the fresh memories, but he also had the ability to put it into words. So for my job, I work with students with disabilities. A lot of our students have autism, so I just thought it was a really important book for me to read, and it was really interesting. And it's just given me a little bit more insight into how the minds of some of our students work and like strategies for how to help them best as well. So even though it wasn't on my list, it is a new book that I've read this year that I've never read before, so I am going to count it, but I also still want to finish my 17 books. There are 2 other books that I'm reading at school. There's one that I'm reading in an English class that is just staying in that class because it's not mine to take with me, so I read it every time I go there. And there's another one that I was reading in the library, but obviously I'm not going to take it out of the library, so there might be a few extra books that I'm reading on top of my 17 in the list. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think the more I read, the better, really. So anyway, I have now finished 3 new books this year. So I just finished the Esti Spumanti Code by Toby Clements. This one was the parody of the Da Vinci Code. I thought parts of it were really funny and parts of it were really stupid. But the book itself is not too long. It did take me a few weeks to read, but only because I just wasn't reading much. I was reading a little bit before work started each morning because I get to work quite early. So I was reading like, I don't know, maybe 10 pages a day. Anyway, it basically follows the plot of the Da Vinci Code, but then it's got like a couple of twists and stuff towards the end. I do think it is written quite cleverly, if that's a word, but I also found that like in between the funny things that were happening, it is a little bit boring. But like I said, the book's not too long, so it doesn't really matter. I don't think you have to have read the Da Vinci Code in order to enjoy this one, but I think it does help because a lot of the funny things are because they're making fun of that, but then a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are just funny on their own anyway. Overall verdict, not my favourite book in the world, but it's worth a read if you have it or if you can find it at the library. I'd say pick it up. So I think I'm going to end this update here because it's been a couple of months since I posted my introduction video. So I've read 4 books in total and 3 of them are from the initial list that I had. One of them was an extra one that I read at work. The date that I'm filming this is I think the 16th of April, so we are a quarter of the way through the year and I've read 4 books. I need to hurry it up a little bit, but I am on holiday for the next 2 weeks, so I should be able to read another couple of books in that time. Anyway, thank you for watching my update video. Let me know if you're doing something like this in the comments below, like if you're trying to read a certain number of books this year or if you're trying to do something else this year along the same lines. Don't forget to subscribe if you aren't already, and I will see you next time. Bye!